It's Neil Atkinson, it's Rob Gutmann, it is Talking Reds, and we're talking about a calm before a storm. It strikes me that no one's doing business. Chelsea can't. Arsenal quiet, Tottenham quiet, City quiet, United noisy but actually quiet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There's things happening, lots of things being rumoured, but there's only really Real Madrid who are going about any degree of business so far this window. Is all that fair?
Yeah, and Madrid seem to have got their business very early. I mean, they boxed Militao, didn't they? It's Furland, Mendy, Mondi, Jovic, yeah. So they've really got
Hazard,
and in a sense, them getting it done early sort of doesn't clip their wings exactly, but their coffers can't be that full unless they start doing some swaps, and I think that's where it could get interesting. I think they're going to be the core of the business. Them and Man U, aren't they?
And maybe Munich.
Yeah, Bayern need to replace the two big lads, the two main players, don't they? This Pogba transfer intrigues me. I think that could trigger all kinds of things. Did you see he came out with I want out, and United doubled down with he's definitely not going anywhere.
I really enjoyed the fact that he wants a new challenge, and I love the language of it, because it was a bit like, well, you've not really conquered this one, mate. If you want a new challenge, then you, for instance, you could have won either of the major trophies with Manchester United. He's failed markedly to do that, but it's time for a new challenge. I mean, I don't blame him. I think it's the smart move for him. I think he needs to go somewhere where he's not the best player. I think the way you get the best out of him is him not being the best player. But it's still fascinating that he may well be stuck being Man United's best player.
I don't know. I don't think he's going to get stuck. I just think there's a lot of, I don't know if the expression's correct in this instance, I think a lot of gaslighting going on by all parties, that actually presenting Paul Pogba as something he clearly wasn't last season. I mean, Pogba himself was telling us it's obvious he had a great season. He didn't obviously have a great season. He had a purple patch where goals went in for him and a few decent performances. United are talking as though it's a given that this is a player worth way in excess of 100 million. It wouldn't take less than 150 they're leaking, but they wouldn't sell him. Madrid won't pay more than 120, I think. What universe does this player exist in? Some sort of mythical universe. Maybe that's most of his career, in truth.
I like him.
I like him as a person, tremendously.
I like him as a person. I like him. I think he's a good player. I just think he can't be the best player. I think that's one of the... I think in general, some football truisms are truisms, and the one are truisms because they're true, and the one I very much do subscribe to is your best player needs to be your number 9. That is something which, or more accurately, certainly needs to be very much in attack. I think every side's best player needs to be one of the lads who scores the goals in attack, not a midfield provider. In one of the many parallels you can draw all over the place to Liverpool, Man United since 1992 now. I think one of the issues that we had, I mean, you and I used to argue about Coutinho, and my Coutinho issue wasn't whether or not he's good. We have a problem when he thinks and the rest of the team think he's the best player.
Yeah.
It's no surprise to me that one of the things that we kick on at the end of 2017, start of 2018, Mo Salah becomes Liverpool's best player, and then he really becomes Liverpool's best player, and it just clarifies things in lots of people's minds.
Yes, I see that with Pogba in particular, because he's a between stools player.
Yep. They're the worst.
You do need to see some serious numbers from your best player. Although I think we've sort of bucked a trend with, has Van Dijk been our best player last season?
Well, you and we had the discussion last week actually on the Reds Bet insert for weekend. Some people might not have listened to it, where we said about the Ballon d'Or, and I said Van Dijk he's currently favourite to win the Ballon d'Or, and I said I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I always think attackers should win these awards because it's still the magical bit of football. And you said Sadio Mane's arguably been, you can put a really strong argument that Sadio Mane's been our best player. I would say in 18-19, sorry.
Well, there's the healthy position to be is when we're having debates about who our best players,
very much so.
But at a high level, not at a mid-table level. So there are people you could put in a room. Someone's going to say Salah, someone's going to say Mane, someone's going to say Van Dijk, and I'll bet there'll be a voice in the back who'll go Bobby Firmino as well. And someone will say it'll be Trent this time next year. That's the wonderful place to be. And I think Man United's reality is Paul Pogba probably, he is their best player, and God help them if he remains being so, because he hasn't been good enough, although he has enormous talent.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. You're doing a gutter today.
Yes.
You're having a big chat about, firstly, Salah's mad link, but it's worth bearing in mind that Salah's mad link, to me, a lot of these links, a lot of what's going on at the minute, on the most sort of basic level, someone like Chukwueze, who we talked about, is a link that's getting linked to Liverpool in 2019, because Liverpool will probably be continuing to have a look at him in 2020, 2021. The Chukwueze question will not be settled until 2021. You do wonder whether or not, with the conversation around Salah, that there will at some point probably be, next year or the year after, talk about him maybe moving on because there may be bigger paydays for him or something like that if Liverpool don't maybe consider changing the wage structure.
Well, we'll be talking in the show, we're mentioning two names that will make people go, oh, come off it, Salah and Mbappe. Neither, I think, are likely to be involved in transfers this summer. But what their names, what's indicative of is Liverpool are now at the top table of European football. They've definitively put themselves there, not just with the European Cup win with a 97-point season.
And back-to-back finals.
Back-to-back finals. Liverpool are there. And there's a mantra that to improve this squad, you've got to be. There's no point spending big money on players who aren't as good as what we have already. Well, what we have already is incredibly good. So who's better than Mo Salah and Sadio Mane in Europe? You'll have to start with Mbappe, and even then you're having a debate. So that's the level. There is a conversation to be had about whether we should be looking at that level. At the same time, we've got players who are now at that level, like Salah, and they're entitled to go. I think Mbappe's on 400 grand a week. I think Bale's on 500 grand a week. What's wrong with me? And this is the sort of conversation we're going to be having.
And do you think it's the sort of conversation that's being had at Liverpool? I
think in the top boardrooms, they're obviously very bright people. They have to be. No one's saying, please, I don't want to talk about 400 grand a week for anybody. We just don't do that. That's not what we do. I think the fans don't want to talk about that. That's the problem. They think, no, we don't do it. I think we as fans it's going to take us a while to get out of a mindset.
Is the issue the knock-on effect? Because you, for instance, mentioned Van Dijk before, and this is where it is a little bit different in that, if you end up in a situation where, let's say you feel you've got to move Salah to 350 grand a week, then you've probably got to move Van Dijk there. You've got to move, you've got to move Mane there. You've now suddenly, but then the knock-on effect of that is that suddenly you've got Jordan Henderson knocking on the door and saying, well, I was happy to be on 50% or 75% of what they're on, and I find myself on 35% of what they're on. Now, come on, we've got to square this circle. And I think that's possibly what scares, if anything scares Liverpool, it'll be that scares Liverpool more than the other stuff. It's the idea that you've got this structure and then you end up in a situation where United, to bring it back to them, are at, where they cannot clear the decks. They cannot clear the decks of their rubbish. My worry is that you set traps for yourself that you're eventually going to fall into if you accelerate this quicker than you need to.
Well, United's case is slightly different in that they've been prepared to do that, to go from a relatively modest position to a higher position. I'm talking about Liverpool doing it from a position of strength, where the guys have proven themselves. So United were bringing in players who still had it all to do in a certain respect in their context. I think it's interesting. Are there models of teams that don't eventually pay world-class wages and sustain being at a level? I was watching a programme on LFC TV last night about Klopp at Dortmund and reliving these two titles in his European his Champions League run. And it's remarkable to see again how fantastic they do in that context. But they're never able to take the next step in terms of what they're paying their staff, their playing staff. And I think the inevitable decline comes because of that. And I think if you're talking about the world elite of 4 or 5, they're all paying some of their players the silly money. I'm not sure. The only one who might slightly buck this trend, but I could be wrong on it, is Bayern Munich, who I think pay very, very well. But I don't think they got many 300, 400, 500.
But they pay the top wages in Germany, so they're paying the top wages in that particular league, and this is where this does get a little bit difficult from a Liverpool point of view. So when, for instance, Manchester United, to go back to them because I think they're a really interesting example around this, they put themselves in a situation where Marcus Rashford could knock on the door and ask for 300 grand a week, and it not be laughed out of town. And that would be my concern for Liverpool as a business model. Forget the playing side stuff we can have the grown-up conversation about, but my concern for Liverpool in a business model sense is just, if you get 2 of these wrong, you're stuck with them and they skew everything. So if you get 2 wrong, 2 who don't either haven't performed or don't perform for you or cease to perform for you once you do the move, you can end up in a situation where everyone suddenly ends up a step who doesn't need to be.
This is why it's tough.
It is why it's tough.
Look at here's my comparison. Barcelona are currently where you are with Phil Coutinho and Dembele, I imagine, right? I think they're probably paying them silly. Coutinho supposedly on 350 grand a week or something, and I imagine they put Dembele on big money too.
Yep.
And they're both floundering a bit.
And they're both good players. And they're both really good players.
Of course, they're good players, as is Alexis Sanchez, by the way, but he's floundering in that context. Rewind 3 years ago, they're paying those ridiculous wages, but they're paying them to Neymar, to Messi, to Luis Suarez. Not too many more in that squad, by the way. Maybe Iniesta was getting that money.
Yeah.
So it works when it works, it doesn't when it doesn't. But if you don't go to that table, which Barcelona do keep going to, I think one thing's inevitable: you will not keep that top talent.
All very interesting stuff that is to come on the gutter today. On the Anfield wrap, we're going to have a little look ahead to Liverpool's fixtures in pre-season and have a conversation around them, what Liverpool's thinking will be, what we can anticipate early on. The other thing as well to sort of point out is the calm before the storm. We are waiting for everyone to move. We're going to have a chat about that, and it may well be that Liverpool, who were relatively strongly linked to Marco Asensio at the weekend, might be waiting to see who ends up out of favour at some of the clubs they'll feel as though they can buy from, which is a little bit different to the idea of going and getting people from. By the way, just what was in my mind amongst all of this, when you were talking, for instance, about Madrid, it struck me as really, really interesting that that Madrid have done a few, in inverted commas, Liverpool-esque buys. Yes, they've done Hazard from Chelsea, but in years gone by, when they do a big set of purchases, they tend to go to other big clubs and take the best player. Yeah. What they've actually done is Jovic, you mentioned Militao, Mendy, that these are sort of, Man City, looking at the more Man City-ish when Man City bought Bernardo Silva, than they are classic Madrid, where they buy an Eden Hazard, but buy 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, Hazard's the only one you call a Galactico, but I think it shows that they feel they've got and the early business they've done, they've got quite a big overhaul to do. I think that 4th Champions League winning team that beat us in Kiev, I think they've realised in-house that fell off a cliff very, very quickly after that final. I mean, they were outstandingly fortunate the way it made it look like it was a routine win, when perhaps they know it wasn't. Perhaps they know if they got Liverpool on another day, it could have brought forward that change process.
Okay, that is to come on the gutter. So you've got the Anfield wrap, you've got the gutter there, your shows today. Listen, we are going to the United States. When Liverpool go to the United States, go to theanfieldwrap.com/TAW live, and you'll be able to see tickets there for shows currently Chicago and New York. We are sorting Boston out at the minute, and buy all the merchandise. It's absolutely fantastic, and it is flying out the shelves. It's not even in stock, some of it, I'll be quite honest with you, but buy it, get it in, get your order in, and then go from there. They are working really, really hard downstairs and in terms of manufacturing it to get it out to you as soon as possible. It's been Rob Gutmann, it's been Neil Atkinson. It's a fantastic day in Liverpool. Well, what I mean is it's not raining. See you soon.